Hello, 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 and welcome to the Healing Half. My name is Mickey Spear. I am a musician, author, and talk show host of tonight's quick 3-minute refresh of the week called The Healing Half. When I was 13 years old, my mom passed away from cancer. I spent the better part of a decade pretending I was fine, trying to convey to the world that there was nothing wrong. And that didn't go very well. In fact, it went very poorly. I really struggled with that unprocessed grief, and it came out in a myriad of ways. And eventually, 10 years after her death, things were crumbling all around me, emotionally, relationally, academically, spiritually, just across the board. I was really struggling. I didn't know what it was. And after lots of conversations with counselors and doctors, it turns out I had a ton of unprocessed grief. And now, after having lots more conversations with doctors, counselors, reading lots of books, I realized the absolute importance of leaning into our hard emotions, as well as learning how do we help others in situations that we don't quite understand. So I wanted to put a show together that just combined those two forces, where we get to learn how we can address our own wounds, but also learn about stories and situations that we don't understand and get to kind of pick their brain a little bit so that we can love people better. It's a short, quick show, and I'm so grateful that each and every one of you are here. So if you are watching it live, give me a hello in the comment section. Let me know where you're tuning in from. And if you're watching it as a replay, please do the same. I go through and I look at all the comments. I'd love to see that you guys are here and hear what you guys have to say in regards to all the different topics that we talked about on this show. And before we jump into our amazing guest speakers, and yes, that is plural. We have a mother-daughter dynamic duo tonight that I'm so excited to be able to learn more about their stories. As I wanted to share a couple quick updates with all things Mickey Spear with you guys. So the first one is, if you haven't signed up for my email list, make sure you head on over to mickyspear.com. I always do this. I'm not sure, depending on your phone, where that comment box is for you. But I did put Mickey Spear's website in there. And the reason why I want to get you that is I send out a weekly resource email that's going to have the replay, the show notes from tonight, as well as other things, the other resources, other organizations that we partner with to make sure you have as many tools and resources as possible. And one of those tools is one that we talked about for the past couple of weeks called Brain Peace. And as we kind of wrap up our mental health talk, and tonight's going to be one of our last times, I just cannot stress enough the importance of getting online, getting your own copy, like I've got mine right here, and filling that out so that way you can have an action plan for when you start to go through some hard days, which, hey, we all do to varying degrees. And then the last thing that I wanted to share with you guys is I am starting a store, which is such a blast. And if you know me, I love to encourage people. I love to create things for folks. And with Mother's Day coming up, it's coming up fast, right? It'll be here before we know it. I wanted to create some cards that kind of said, hey, I know it's Mother's Day, but I know you don't have a mom. And I just feel like the stores don't have cards that speak to people. And my situation, whether you're a kid who lost a parent all the way up to, in your 70s and you just lost your mom. It's, if you know anybody who has lost a mom, whether recently or not, I am creating different cards for different situations surrounding a motherless Mother's Day. And in fact, I'm going to even be creating some more cards for bereaved mothers on Mother's Day too. So the store is evolving, it's growing. But in the meantime, I wanted to share one of my cards with you. Last week I shared a different one, but this one is kind of more of, dare I say, a funnier card that says, here's an I don't know exactly what to say, but if I lost my mom, I have a hunch all those cheesy Mother's Day commercials would be really hard card. And then on the inside, it says here for you, and then you can sign your note. So just know, if you know anybody who has lost a mom, this is a great, feel free to check out my store. I've got 5 or 6 different varieties that you can kind of find. And that will be talked about, of course, as we get closer to Mother's Day. But I just wanted to put that on your radar. So without further ado, let's bring on our two amazing guests as we talk about the hashtag Fight for a Life You Love. So Jenny and Kaeli Landon, welcome to the Healing Half.
Hi. Hi, Mickey. Thanks for having us.
Oh, it is so great to be here. So do you mind telling us where you guys are calling in from tonight?
Go for it.
We're calling in from Boston, Massachusetts, where I'm having my surgery on Thursday. So, pretty cool.
Oh, well, we so appreciate you guys staying up and burning the midnight oil to be on this show that's based in Central Time. So we really do appreciate that. So do you guys want to just kind of introducing yourselves really fast, and then we'll jump into the story?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm Jenny Landon, and for those of you who saw me when I was on the show before, just a refresher that I started Growing Out of Darkness, which is a nonprofit focused on mental health. And I have a book that is called Growing Through Grief, and it's a guide to healthy healing after losing a loved one to suicide. And I have gone through my own experiences with mental health struggles, as well as losing my dad to suicide, which is really what kickstarted me into truly understanding mental health, depression, and suicide nearly 22 years ago. And then this is my daughter, Kaeli, who is now 17. But when she was 15, she had gone through some mental health struggles for a couple of years. But at the age of 17 was when things, or sorry, at the age of 15, 2 years ago, is when things really just amplified to the point that she went through a crisis and actually attempted suicide. And she has worked really hard. We as a family have worked really hard to really help her go from feeling suicidal to thriving and really being her best self.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you both so much for being here. Kaeli, I know we are just so grateful. You're the first teenager I've had on the show. So welcome.
Yay, victory.
Victory, you're the first one. But thank you so much. I know this is a big topic. And Jenny, I'm so sorry for your loss, but I'm so grateful for both of you guys to be here and share this story because again, I lost a brother-in-law to suicide. Mental health in all of its as far as on the spectrum is something we just don't talk about much as a culture, but we know statistically so many people are struggling in high school and in middle school with depression. And so I know I had my own struggles too, but I think what's so great about your guys' story is whether we're dealing with it, statistically, we're going to know some family that is dealing with it in some capacity. So we're just so grateful for you guys to share your perspective and your story. So Kaeli, I guess I'll kick it off to you. You started a hashtag, which is the name of the show, called Fight for a Life You Love. Now, we don't have to explain what hashtags are. We're going to either assume people know or they don't know. At this point, we can't fix it if they don't know what a hashtag is. And that's okay if you are listening and you don't. But do you mind kind of sharing the story behind that?
For sure. So, like she said, when I was 15, I was not in a good place. And I felt very alone in that place because at the same time, like I needed help and I wanted help, but I felt completely alone and didn't know who to go to. And I was just kind of trapped in that dark place until I attempted, and then I. It's risky. I finally communicated because I realized how bad of shape I was. And so I finally went to my school counselor and said, I need help. And he definitely brought a whole team together. She did most of it, but yeah, I definitely got the help that I needed. But my friends didn't necessarily see it like that. They are they were always trying to sympathize with me and trying to tell me it was all good, but I was helping myself get better, and just through things that I found, and uh just yeah. So I fought for a life that I wanted to live, and now I feel like I'm living it, so that's good.
Yeah, so the big thing where the hashtag came from was, this is what I do, is I teach people about wellness. And this is where I want to point out, Mickey, what you were saying is even if we personally haven't gone through a struggle, we know someone who has. And I think these days, there is no one who hasn't gone through some sort of struggle within their household. But I think the idea is that none of us are immune. And so even though this is what I do for a living and I teach people about wellness, it was especially frustrating to have a child who I could see was struggling, and I was reaching out to her and I was constantly trying to help her, and she was pushing me away and she was fighting me. And then the day after she attempted suicide, I sat down with her, and I said to her, Kaeli, I've now realized that my greatest fear isn't that you're going to die. And I would be devastated. I would be sad. But in all honesty, my greatest fear is that you are going to live a life of misery and you're going to seek out drugs and alcohol as a way to self-medicate. Yeah. And I learned a long time ago that making decisions based on fear never ends well. And yet that's all I've been doing. I mean, I wouldn't hug her because anytime I tried, she'd push me away and she'd get angry. And I didn't go in the morning to wake her up in the way that I used to when she was younger. And it was this really difficult dance of knowing how much of this is just teenage angst and how much of this is like severe depression and, you know, where we're going. So it's like, do I give her space? What do I do? And after she attempted suicide, when I was talking to her, I said, I realized I'm not going to act from a place of fear anymore. And I'm also not going to simply just try to keep you alive, right? What is the point in stopping a suicide if we don't help that person want to be in this life? And so I said to her, I said, no one chooses to be in a dark place, but we have to fight to get out of it. And I'm going to help you fight for a life you love. And that changed everything for me. Like in that moment, it was this aha moment that just kind of came out of me. But then I was like, oh my gosh, yes, and so it made me realize that everything I had been doing up until that point had been approaching her with therapy options that were fear-based, right? And even if the therapy was good, my approach was coming from a place of fear. I was scared all the time and I was unsure. But when I had this mindset shift, it became okay, what are we going to do so that you love this life, right? And we also went beyond, even for me, what I would call typical approach, but I know for most people is not typical. So I had tried getting her an acupuncture, which she hated. We did different types of massage therapy. We worked with holistic chiropractors. We worked with a naturopathic doctor. I mean, you name it, I had tried everyone. And I sat there thinking about, what she really loved and what she wanted to do. And one of the things she really wanted to do was aerial silks. But we couldn't get into the class that was for kids. Like they were always full and it was impossible to get into it. So I started calling the adult programs and they all told me the same thing. You have to be 18. And finally, the last place, I just broke down and I said, listen, I am truly fighting for my child's life. And I explained to her what was going on. And she said, you know what? I went through mental health struggles myself, and this helped me so much. Why don't you bring her in? And so I was all excited. I'm like, Kaeli, guess what? I got you in a class. And she's like, nope, I'm not going to do it.
Oh,
and I was like, what do you mean no? I fought to get you in this class. What do you mean no? And her anxiety was so high. And so we got there on Saturday morning and she was refusing to get out of the car because she didn't want to do it by herself. And so I looked at her and I was like, all right, I'll do it with you. I'll do the class with you. So we went in, and I'm going to tell you, I work out every day. I'm pretty fit, but what they do in that class, oh my gosh, like it's ridiculous. And so I was so glad about halfway through the class when the teacher came up to me and was like, maybe you should stop. And I was like, but really, I think she was scared I was going to throw up all over the floor because I have an inner ear issue. But I continued to do various types of aerial silks classes with her that were less intensive, but still.
Aerial yoga is very different than aerial
yeah, I get that it's different, but it still messed with my ear. And the fact that I continued to do it. So I did 3 classes with her until I convinced the teacher or the owner to let her little sister go with her instead of me. And, but it was interesting because about 6 months later, I was talking to Kaeli. We were going to an event where she was going to be speaking for the first time. And I asked her, I'm like, do you remember that conversation? And she goes, yeah, you really pissed me off. So it was this conversation of how I was going to fight for her to live a life she loves. And she's like, you pissed me off. I was like, what? Like, what do you mean? And this is where I want everyone to really be aware. When someone isn't well, just like Kaeli said, she didn't know who to go to, right? Even though I was going to her regularly and offering support and offering help, when someone is in that really dark place, it is hard for them to think clearly. It is hard for them to make rational decisions. In fact, I would say that when someone's in a really dark place, the ability to make rational decisions has been taken away. And so she said to me, she's like, Mom, when you said that to me, all I heard you say was that you didn't care if I lived or died. And so keep that in mind, that I always tell people, when you're approaching someone who's struggling, if you're approaching them from a place of love, you can be confident in what you're going to say. But you have to be aware that they may not be able to receive you from a place of love.
Yeah.
Right. And so she couldn't receive me. But what ended up happening, because it wasn't like I just said it and then that was it. I acted on it. And for months, I acted on it. Time and time again, I did things to prove to her that I was truly acting from a place of love, a place of understanding and compassion. And she told me that she started to see what I was doing. She started to realize that I was truly fighting for her to live a life she loved. And then do you want to tell them what you realized? So I'm not telling everyone that you had been fighting. So what she told me, she told me that at that point, she realized she'd been fighting the wrong thing. And that all of this time she had been fighting me when she should have been fighting the darkness.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. So profound. And yeah, fighting the wrong thing and realizing who's on your team versus who's trying to hurt you. That's a tough balance to strike and discover, especially when that rational part has been taken away from you. So thank you so much for sharing. I'm so glad that you guys have each other, that you're like kind of doing this together. But quick kind of follow-up question for Kaeli, because I remember my own, after my mom died, and Dad, who's watching, hi Dad, I was very angry at him, and I was channeling my grief for my mom towards the fact that he was dating again, and I would dance all around and I'd get angry at all this stuff other than the real problem. So I guess your story definitely resonated with me, where I remember just being angry and edgy. And Kaeli, so I guess my question is, when your mom came to you in those moments and like tried to help, what back then, what was it like? Like, can you shed a little bit of light at the spot that you were at, like when you saw your mom coming to you and trying to help?
Yeah, so definitely when I was in that dark spot, when my mom or like that school counselor or my friends would come to try to help me, I felt like they were trying to make me someone that I wasn't, or like try to fix me when I didn't, like I didn't necessarily feel entirely broken. And I'm like, well, I can, figure it out for myself and I can do it. It's fine. Because I always felt like everyone was coming down on me and I just didn't know what to do. So definitely having everyone around me, just like, I know they were trying to help now, but definitely when they were all like, okay, so we're going to do this, or we're going to do that, or, hey, I'm sorry about this, or we should do this. And I felt trapped in this like cage of words that literally didn't mean much to me. Like I heard them, but I was just like surrounded by them and I didn't know what to do with that.
I think that a lot of it was the way we were approaching it was, here's the problem. Here's what's wrong with you. Here's what's wrong. Here's what's wrong. We have to fix it. We have to deal with it, versus really focusing on even, truly asking her how she was feeling. what she was going through, and how she wanted to get help. Or even, one of the things we've talked about is after she attempted, she was very public about it, because I've raised my kids to speak openly about mental health. And so she was very comfortable talking about it at first. But then the response from students at school became so negative, that became, one of the things we've talked about is the way that people responded to her. That, do you want to tell us what it was like at school?
Side eyes, but also, hey, you're fine. It's okay. You're okay now.
Yeah, so there was mixed things. They would tell her she was fine. She didn't have any reason to have any problems. They actually would tell her that she had everything. She had parents who cared about her. She's white. She was rich. She had no reason to have depression. And then it was also one day she came home. She was really frustrated. She came home early, and she's like, Mom, I can't be at school and get upset about anything, because when people see me upset, like maybe it's stress over a test or an assignment, they come up to me and they say, are you okay? And if I'm honest and I say, I'm stressed, I'm upset, then they're like, oh my gosh, you're suicidal. We have to take you to the social worker. And she goes, but if I say, no, I'm fine, don't worry about it, then they go, oh my gosh, you're lying, you're suicidal, we have to take you to the social worker.
So either way, I was with the social worker at least for 2 hours every day. So, yep. And he knew, but he was also cautious because I'm not friends with them anymore, but they came to him so often, and I was with them every day.
Some friends. She's not friends with certain friends anymore.
But and so he didn't know who to believe, because I'd also started lying to him, like not necessarily lying, but just what appeared to be lies. And so I'd be with him for like 2 hours every day, just all right, guess I'm here now.
Oh, what was helpful were the friends who, instead of like, if they saw that she was struggling, instead of coming up and saying, what's wrong, or are you okay, they would say, hey, do you want to go for a walk? Hey, do you want to go with me to work on this project? So it was more, again, that like, rather than focusing on what's wrong, and not that we have to ignore that there's an issue, but it was this just saying, like, let's go do something else, right? Like, let's get your mind on something else. Let's give you a break from the fact that it seems like there's always something wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's awesome. Oh, I'm so sorry, Kaeli, that you had to deal with that. And like you said, you're open, you're honest about it, but you're telling it to people who don't understand. So they might see you kind of as perpetually this thing. You're like, I'm a lot more complex than that. Like, so how did you, in addition to what else helped, how did you kind of get to a spot where you're comfortable at school? You don't feel necessarily like people, or maybe this is still in that spot, and if so, I apologize for assuming. But like, how did you get to the spot where you were able to communicate, like, you don't have to worry about me every second, but also I also still have mental health, so don't forget about me, and kind of find that nice balance?
I started working on myself. I started doing things that made me happy, and the people who stayed with me throughout the years definitely noticed a very large difference in me. And it's just, I was working on myself. I don't know. It's nothing that they did necessarily. It's just I took care of myself, and like, I never could genuinely laugh or smile before, but now I do that all the time. And now they're like, they worry about me sometimes, but when I say, hey, I'm doing good, they believe me now, which is really good.
Yeah, what's actually really exciting, she won't think it's exciting. What I think is really exciting is that like 3 weeks ago, she and her boyfriend broke up. And 2 years ago, if that had happened, I mean, he's been her best friend for years. They've been each other's lifeline through quarantine. If sorry, one second, my computer's talking to me, that, 2 years ago, if she had had this stressful event, she would have disappeared to the basement. She would have hidden in her little crawl space, and she would have, acted in self-harm. And what was amazing was the night that it happened, that's not what she did. She didn't go, take part in any kind of self-harm. She came to me. Right. She came to me, and it was midnight. I was in bed, but she came to me, and I sat with her. And I even said to her, I said, you know what, Kaeli, I'm not going to fix you. I'm not going to take your pain away. And in fact, for like the next 24 to 48 hours, I don't want you to worry about anything other than feeling this pain. Right. Like, just accept it and own it and be in it. I will let the school know that you're struggling. And I would say that when you ask, like, what did we do to help her go from being, struggling to now being well, was really continuing to speak openly about her mental health, and specifically with the staff, to let them know things that were going on, and to really advocate for herself when work was getting, the pressure was too much, whether it was pressure from her classmates or pressure from academics. And in fact, one of the things that we learned was that Kaeli has very high empathy and is in a school with a lot of students that need extra support. And what we started to notice was that if she was at school for 3 days in a row, her mental health would severely decline. And so we actually, even before quarantine happened, we set it up with her school. So she only went to class Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And Wednesday became her support day. So Wednesday was, she worked with her therapist. She did her aerial silks class. She worked with an energy healer. She would go get massages. She'd work with a tutor. But Wednesdays were her support day, and it made it to where she could handle 2 days at school with people. And I'd say she really started to learn who was a real friend and who wasn't. And she started to recognize who she wanted to spend her time with, and who she was going to trust and who she wasn't.
Oh, that's amazing, you guys. I could talk to you two for like 7 more hours. So we'll just have to have you both back on the show in a little bit. But we are coming up on to our kind of our end of our time. So I got the same question for both of you, but like with a slightly different variation is kind of my last question. And I promise I'll do my best not to ask too many follow-up questions. So I'll start with you, Kaeli. If you could talk to another teenager in high school who is struggling, perhaps let's go back to that spot that you were in, what would you, in a couple sentences, like what would you tell them as someone that as the place that you are in now?
From my experience, it sounds like cheesy and cliche, and I hate it, but don't be afraid to let people in, but also take your own time to process what's going on, because overall you matter most. And the sooner you realize that you yourself matter more than what people are saying and what people are thinking about you, that's what's going to help you the most. So definitely just take time for yourself. You don't need to worry about anything else. Just worry about yourself right now. And when you're ready, let people in.
Oh, I want to cry. That's so beautiful. Thank you, Kaeli, so much for being here and for sharing all your great perspective. And Jenny, kind of to toss it to you as a parent, what would you say? Because again, whether people are teachers or in their youth group, we all know someone who has, it seems to be a kid struggling with depression one way or another. What would you say to parents who are in that spot and they're kind of like you going, what is going on? Like nothing's working.
Yeah, well, for sure. One, I want to say before I forget, anyone who is in that situation and needs someone to talk to, please go to my website. And I have a page on there called One-to-One Support Services, and you can set up a call with me. And I'm not a therapist, I'm not a coach, but I'm a mom, and I was a trained crisis counselor. And I'm just really there to help you feel heard and understood, and brainstorm on ideas. But one of the things that I think this sounds cheesy and like it would never work, but one of the things that has helped me, and I think in turn has helped Kaeli, I was taught this by a psychologist, that when you are struggling, again, whatever you're focused on is what you're going to create. So if you're focused on what you're afraid of, it is going to continue to get worse, right? And so this psychologist taught me that in those moments when I'm worried about Kaeli or myself or anyone else, is to sit down and pen to paper, write their name at the top of the piece of paper, and then write out all the things you love about them. Right, from everything from, whether they have a beautiful smile or a specific thing, like writing a book of poems and giving them to you for Mother's Day. So whatever you want to list, but she taught me that the more that I write about what I love about her and what I want to see more of in her, like what I see for her future, the more I'm going to see that. And so we are all energy. We're all made of energy. So when we can remember that and really focus our energy on the positive rather than the fear. And I know, Mickey, we're planning on having another show in the summer where I'm really going to speak more to help people understand mental health and understand suicide so that we can help remove that fear and uncertainty. But in the meantime, honestly, if anyone has questions or needs some support, please do reach out to me.
Oh my gosh, you both are angels. Thank you so much for being on the show. So grateful. Kaeli, good luck with the rest of your time in Boston. I can't wait to hopefully meet you one day in person when I'm back in Minnesota. Jenny, as always, thank you so much for being here. You guys have totally blessed me, blessed my show. So everyone watching, let them know what you think. Give them a big thank you. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your night.
Thanks, Mickey. You have a good night too. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much. Bye, you guys. And I did put that website that Jenny referenced in the comments, as well as her amazing book that she talked about. So please check it out. And again, this whole show, and my prayer for this show is that we all come out of this quick half an hour every week with more knowledge. So if you came away with something new tonight, I know I came away with like 40 new things tonight. Let me know in the comments section, what was your biggest takeaway, or that at least you took something away. And of course, if you are not on my weekly resource email, that's what this is all about, is making sure you have tools like Jenny and all that she did, and Kaeli and all of her perspective in your back pocket. And again, depression can touch any one of us at any time in a severe way. So this is really good information that quite literally can save lives. So feel free to share this with a friend, save the bookmark. And as always, if you are in a spot that need help, please, please, please reach out. You matter. We all want you to have a thriving life, not just survive, but thrive. So thank you all so very much for being here. I really, really do appreciate that. I'm going to put in the comment section, if you have a moment and you like the show, please don't hesitate to head over to Google. The link is in the comments, wherever that is for you, and leave a review if you're interested. If not, don't worry about it. I will see you guys next week, and I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your time. All right. Bye, you guys.